If you grew up constantly reading the room, sensing tension before it erupted, and stepping in to calm everyone down, you weren't just being helpful, you were surviving. And here's what most people don't understand. The skills you developed as the family peacemaker didn't just shape your childhood. They rewired your entire nervous system in ways that still show up today. You're not overly sensitive. You're not responsible for everyone's feelings. You're someone who learned to navigate chaos with a rare form of emotional intelligence that psychology is only beginning to fully understand. In this video, we explore 5 rare signs that reveal you are the peacemaker in a toxic home, and what these patterns mean for who you are today. If you've ever been called too intense, felt exhausted after social gatherings, or wondered why you can predict conflict before it happens, these traits will finally make sense. Each sign reveals something profound about your nervous system, your strengths, and the unique way you move through the world. Here's what's happening in your brain. When you grew up mediating arguments and absorbing emotional chaos, your nervous system learned to treat other people's feelings as survival data. You developed what psychologists call emotional enmeshment, a blurred boundary where you genuinely feel responsible when someone else is upset, even if you had nothing to do with it. This might show up as apologizing when someone seems distant, immediately problem-solving when a friend vents, or feeling physical anxiety when you sense tension in a room. You might replay conversations for hours, analyzing what you could have said differently to make someone feel better. This isn't codependency in the way people casually use that term. This is a finely tuned survival mechanism. Psychology calls this parentification, when a child takes on the emotional caretaking role that adults should have provided. The truth is, you learn to regulate everyone else's nervous system because yours was never consistently regulated. But here's the reframe. This means you possess extraordinary emotional attunement. You notice what others miss. Your body learned to detect danger signals that others completely overlook. Before anyone raises their voice, before the argument actually starts, you already know it's coming. You notice the subtle shift in someone's tone, the micro-expression that flashes across their face, the way energy changes in a room. Here's what's happening. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, was trained in an environment where conflict could escalate unpredictably. So you developed what trauma researchers call hypervigilance, but specifically tuned to interpersonal dynamics. This might show up as tensing up when 2 people disagree even slightly, mentally planning exit strategies at social events, or feeling exhausted after being around people because you're constantly scanning for emotional weather patterns. You might find yourself thinking, "I knew this would happen," right before tension explodes. Psychology calls this anticipatory anxiety, but it's more than anxiety. It's pattern recognition on a neurological level. This isn't paranoia. This is your nervous system operating on data collected from years of needing to stay 2 steps ahead of emotional chaos. The strength here is profound situational awareness. When someone reaches out and you can't immediately respond, you feel a physical discomfort that goes beyond normal concern. You might feel guilty for taking time for yourself, anxious when you set boundaries, or like you're abandoning people when you say no. Here's what's happening. In your family system, your worth was tied to your utility. Your value came from being the mediator, the emotional shock absorber, the one who made things better. So your brain learned to associate self-worth with availability. This might show up as checking your phone compulsively, overcommitting to plans even when you're exhausted, or feeling like you need permission to rest. You might say yes when you mean no, because the guilt of disappointing someone feels unbearable. Psychology calls this conditional self-worth. Your value feels dependent on what you provide others. But here's the reframe. Your desire to help comes from genuine compassion. The issue isn't your kindness. It's that you were never taught that your existence alone, without performing emotional labor, is enough. When someone asks how you're doing, your automatic response is, "I'm fine." Even when you're struggling. You might downplay your achievements, dismiss your own emotions as not a big deal, or feel uncomfortable when attention turns to you. Here's what's happening. In a toxic home, the peacemaker learns that their needs complicate an already unstable system. So you adapted by making yourself smaller, quieter, less of a burden. This might show up as feeling selfish when you express a need, changing the subject when someone asks about your life, or genuinely believing your problems aren't significant compared to others. You might have a high pain tolerance, both physical and emotional, because you learn to function through discomfort. Psychology calls this self-silencing, and research shows it's directly linked to growing up in environments where expressing needs led to conflict or neglect. This isn't humility. This is self-erasure that was necessary for survival. The reframe is this: your ability to endure doesn't mean you should have to. Your needs are not less important because you learn to survive without having them met. Disagreement feels dangerous to you even when it's constructive. You might avoid necessary conversations, over-explain yourself to prevent misunderstanding, or feel physically ill when you need to address an issue. Here's what's happening. In your family system, conflict meant chaos, instability, and emotional flooding. So your nervous system learned to associate any form of disagreement with threat. You developed what psychologists call conflict avoidance coping, where preventing tension feels safer than risking confrontation. This might show up as saying it's fine when it's not, rehearsing conversations for days before having them, or apologizing excessively during disagreements. You might interpret someone's frustration as catastrophic, even when they're just expressing a boundary. Psychology calls this conflict aversion, and it's rooted in a nervous system that learned conflict equals danger. But here's what you need to understand. Healthy relationships require repair, and repair requires addressing problems. The reframe is this: your discomfort with conflict shows you value harmony, but real harmony doesn't mean avoiding all tension. It means navigating disagreement with safety, something you never experienced. If you've ever been told you're too sensitive, overthinking, or taking things too personally, now you understand why. These aren't personality flaws. These are adaptations your nervous system created to help you survive an environment where emotional safety was inconsistent. The truth is, being the peacemaker taught you skills that many people never develop: deep empathy, situational awareness, and the ability to hold space for complex emotions. You're not broken, you're recalibrated. Subscribe for more psychology insights that explain the real reasons behind who you are. And if this brought up difficult emotions, please consider reaching out for support.